We started. Good afternoon. So we are beginning the first Mishnah, and we're going to put it on the screen for you so we can share it. No. This is the first Mishnah of Pirkei Avos. Moshe kibel Torah misinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. For today, that's pretty much all we're going to cover. But umisara Yehoshua, he transmitted it to Yehoshua, to Joshua. V'Yehoshua l'Zakanim, Joshua, he transmitted it to the elders. U'Zakanim l'Neviim, the elders to the prophets. U'Neviim misaruha la'anshe Knesset Hagadola, and the prophets, they transmitted it to the men of the Great Assembly. So, just this is in a sort of way introduction, because it's just telling you information before we get into any laws or any philosophical ideas and Musar ideas. We're setting the groundwork here, and the groundwork is that the Torah and everything that we're talking about starting from now is part of the Torah, was received from Sinai. And Sinai, of course, means that it was received at Mount Sinai from Hashem. And it uses the reference of Sinai because Sinai is the place where Hashem told the people the Torah. He revealed himself, right? And that was the moment when the Torah was given. And so many times we just refer to as Torah mi Sinai, as the phrase here says, that when we believe, right, that the Torah was given by God on Mount Sinai, so we just call it Torah mi Sinai. And this is telling us that even though, there are a lot of ideas here which may sound familiar, not just from Jewish sources, it might be from other sources as well. And many civilizations have lots of nice philosophies, and many of them are valid and good things in terms of how to live a good life. However, what is being taught here is not something that the sages made up. It's not something that they decided on their own. Oh yeah, these are good ideas, and we're going to share them with the people. These are things that were coming from Hashem, transmitted through Moshe and through the various generations. And that's a big difference in terms of the value of it. And as we've discussed many times, we know that when you have a value which is man-made, which is something that we just decided, oh yeah, this is a good thing to do, and that's the only source for it, well, other people can come along and say, we don't agree with that, or that doesn't apply anymore, and all kinds of bad things can happen in the name of what we think is good. So by having it, we know that these things come from Hashem. We know this is what is defined as the right thing to do. We are using the term Moshe kibel Torah misinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai and he transmitted it. Moshe received it from Hashem. Hashem obviously is an intellect greater than a human being, and therefore Moshe could only receive. He didn't necessarily get everything that Hashem knows. I mean, he obviously didn't, but he is able to receive from Hashem. Hashem can't realistically transmit everything to Moshe that he is, but Moshe transmitted everything that he could to Yehoshua. And there's a change of the wording there is indicating that. The other thing that's happening in this opening phrase is we're covering many years. We're covering hundreds and hundreds of years. From the time of Moshe, which is when the Jews came out of Egypt, the Yehoshua obviously was the next in line. So Yehoshua also was just a little younger than Moshe. But then Yehoshua gives it to a group known as the Zakanim. The Zakanim is the elders, and that represents numerous generations. That's not just one generation. That's going to be one elder to the next for a number of generations. And then the prophets were a few hundred years later in terms of the time period. So now the prophets were starting with the time of Shmuel in the prophets, if you read the Tanakh. And that also goes for a few hundred years, and then eventually to the Anshe Knesset Hagadola, which is now going to be the time of the beginning of the Second Temple period, So 1,000 years have been spanned in just this short paragraph here. And it's only from this point in time that we're going to begin quoting individuals or groups in terms of actual statements that are going to be made. So the end of this Mishnah is going to be telling us three things that the men of the Great Assembly said, which was the beginning of the Second Temple period. And then after that, we're going to go generation by generation for a number of generations with specific leaders. And the other thing that we're doing here is we're highlighting the transmission and the leadership. And in every generation, there was someone, or in some cases, more than one person, two people, who were the absolute leaders and clearly the ones who were transmitting the tradition from the previous generation. It's not to say that there weren't other people who also knew and understood, but they were not necessarily what we'll call the link in the chain. So we're able to trace our transmission, our tradition, from generation to generation going back, all the way to Sinai. We could really do that today, but if we read the Rambam, for example, Maimonides, who lived even 1,000 years after this Mishnah was written, close to 1,000 years after that, the Rambam lists all of the generations, even all the way up to his time, of who was the leadership and who is counted as the transmitter of the Masorah, of the tradition. And this Mishnah is giving us that as well. Now, the other important understanding is that the messages that we're going to be giving, right, are, we'll call them ethics, we'll call them morals, but they are, as we said yesterday, they are actually Torah laws. These are not just good ideas, but these are Torah laws. And as we say, Kibel Torah Misinai, telling you that even though they sound like good ideas, it's actually the Torah itself, and it's the oral Torah. Just one other idea here is that Masorah, transmission, in a sense, is handing something over. And it's not just something that I'm telling you. It's something that you are now going to own. And that when we pass something from one generation to another, we're handing it down, not just for you to have an idea about it and learn something, but for you to literally, we'll call it, own it, and for you to pass it on. So each generation is not only receiving the Torah, receiving the information, and receiving how to live, their job is to keep it, protect it, and pass it on to the next generation. And that's the idea of a Masorah. A Masorah is something you hand over. When you receive it, it's not meant for you just to keep it for yourself. It's meant for you also to give it over. So each one of us in each generation has the responsibility of not only maintaining the Torah for ourselves, but also of making sure that it is passed on to the next generation. And each one of these leaders here were responsible really to make sure that the tradition was passed on to the entire generation as a whole, and to make sure that the teachings would be kept in the true way, as opposed to getting distorted. So we have that as well for ourselves. And it's not just information. It's literally becomes part of us, and it becomes how we live our lives. And we're going to hold it there. Have a great day, everyone. And tomorrow we will continue with the starting of the first of the three things that the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah said. Stop share.